Welcome to Currently Adore, a virtual discussion hub for C-Drama and C-Entertainment fans. Today, I'll be talking about Eternal Love of Dream, also known as the Pillow Book, and why it's making me a little confused and frustrated. Just for some background on my quote-unquote relationship with this story, I have not read the books yet, but I have watched 10 Miles, so any impression of this world is just based on what I've seen in that drama. With that being said, while I know the Fengzhou Dijun storyline wasn't canon in 10 Miles, for what it's worth, I did enjoy the Fengzhou Dijun pairing, although I know a lot of people didn't, especially because they didn't like Fengzhou, which I can completely understand. For me, it was just that I already heard these criticisms of her beforehand, so I could temper my expectations a little, and when she did end up showing up on screen, I wasn't really as annoyed by her. I especially started to come around to her towards the end of the show because I liked the trajectory her character was going in. What I'm trying to say with all this is that I went into this show genuinely excited for it and not with the mindset of, oh, these are characters that aren't as good as the originals or that I don't care about as much as the originals. If anything, I was equally as excited to see them in the starring roles. Immediately after watching the first episode, I wrote down this note. I have to say, the only way I can describe my first impression is that I feel like something is missing. Which, to be fair, is a very vague and subjective way to put things. So most of this video is honestly just going to be me trying to put these feelings into more concrete terms. I've only watched up until episode 35 as of recording this, so whatever I say just covers up to this point. And there's also going to be minor spoilers, so just be aware of that if you did not want to be spoiled. The first issue I had with this show was the pacing. The central focus of the first 10 or so episodes is how Fengzhou and Dijun met, as well as the beginning of their relationship. We see many of the old 10 Miles characters back in this world, and we are also introduced to the conflict with the demon tribe. While I think all of these were perfectly fine elements to open with, my issue was with the slow pace. This far in, I still didn't quite understand where we were going, and I just think the time wasn't used very efficiently because for how many episodes had passed, I still didn't feel like I had learned anything significantly new about the characters or about the conflict. And honestly, I just haven't been able to get consistently invested in this show because there were so many parts that I did find interesting, but there were also so many parts that felt so draggy that I had to pause the show and come back to it after several days. I think this is partially due to the pacing, but there's going to be other factors that I'll mention that I think contribute to this as well. While 10 Miles wasn't perfect, I can at least say that it was pretty addicting, and a lot of this I think can be attributed to the way they pace the story. While there might have been a couple exceptions, the different arcs and subplots as a whole didn't feel too boring or too drawn out. Even during parts like episodes 1 to 10 that are, I would say, kind of slower than the rest of the series, I could still kind of justify why they were there, and I could still kind of understand why we had those parts. They at least attempted to give some background to the conflict that would go on in basically the rest of the drama. For example, looking back, while I personally didn't really love the leeching and seeing storyline, I can see why it happened. Without it, he wouldn't have been as invested in her and willing to help her and the people she cared about, especially towards the end. Leeching wouldn't have been able to show his growth and come off as a multifaceted character. Not really sure if that's why this relationship was introduced in the first place, but I'd like to believe it kind of, this line of reasoning kind of factored into it. My second issue was the characterization of the villains. As a whole, I really struggled to care about or even remember the demon tribe subplot in this show, to be completely honest. I think a lot of this comes down to the lack of balance between this storyline and the relationship between the two leads, but a bigger factor is probably how unconvincing the villains were. I get that they're part of the secondary plotline, so they're not really going to be as fleshed out, but their motivations were oversimplified to the point that the characters just felt really shallow and borderline unbelievable. For example, Nie Chuing deciding to get the soul-locking jade for the trapped demon ruler because Siming, Zeyan, and Cheng Yu fought and quote-unquote humiliated him for the sake of getting Feng Zhou's tails back just felt like flimsy reasoning in my opinion, especially when you consider the antagonists in 10 Miles. I've already mentioned how nuanced Li Jing was, but even if you consider his brother, who is considerably less fleshed out and had more of a one-track mind, his actions and motivations still made more sense for what he was trying to accomplish. He wanted to help his dad assume power, even if it was at the cost of his siblings or even himself. While it's not like I was ever rooting for him, I could at least understand his line of reasoning and why he was trying so hard to reach his goal. Moving on to problem 3, the relationship between the leads. As I mentioned earlier, I went into this drama really looking forward to seeing Feng Zhou and Dijun have the spotlight. If the relationship was done well, I'm sure I honestly would have been able to overlook a lot of not as great aspects of the show. But right now, I'm still unsure how I feel about them exactly. I think the way the stages in their journey is structured has made it really hard to get attached to them as a couple. The first 10 episodes, Feng Zhou was either observing Dijun from afar or interacting with him as a fox. Don't get me wrong, I really think the fox was cute and there were some funny moments between them. But it's just really hard to connect with them as an actual, believable pairing this way. There's nothing really substantial for me to latch on to. In the mortal realm, this did improve to some extent, I would say. There were some moments that, albeit cheesy, they got to me a little, I have to say. But still, I didn't feel all that invested in their relationship because the whole premise is that Feng Zhou is going after someone who only looks like Dijun, but is not actually him. So it kind of leaves a weird feeling considering that she's developing something with someone who isn't technically even the guy she originally became infatuated with. To be fair, this is kind of more of a me problem considering that if I remember correctly, this is basically the premise in 10 Miles, and evidently I was fine with it then. But I guess watching this play out again does make it more glaring how weird this whole setup is, and I think this coupled with kind of the first 10 episodes where I don't really feel like the relationship was developing that much, it was just kind of too many episodes where I still didn't really understand the main pairing together. I only feel like we started to finally see the real couple, for lack of better terms, after the mortal realm part of the story ended. But yeah, I have started to like this pairing more after the whole bird tribe stuff, because now at least, this sounds like really the bare minimum, but now at least we get to see them have moments together where they just interact and banter as them, as just purely them. I don't know, that doesn't sound like a pro, but it is, in my books at least. Okay, so, concluding points. While this show has its own fair share of flaws, there are some redeeming qualities that I'm starting to see more and more, especially in the recent episodes. I think this video just stems from a place of slight disappointment because some aspects could have been executed better. And then I think another point, I have a feeling a lot of the issues I have with the show can also be chalked up to the writers sticking to the plot of the original web novel, which I haven't had the chance to read, so I wouldn't know for sure. But I think just based on some of the things my friend has said about the original source material, I think a lot of the stuff in the drama, or the way that it plays out in the drama, happens because it happened in the books. So in that sense, I kind of get why they would keep some things in, but I also think to some extent that when you're adapting it into a different media, I think there can be some artistic liberty taken to make the adaptation translate better. Anyways, that's all I have for today. I'm still trying to figure out my video format, so if you guys have any suggestions, please let me know. I would also love to hear about your opinions on this show, and if you've read the books, how different it is from the books. I'm genuinely really curious to hear what you guys have to say. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!